Now, at least 23 million South Africans are living in poverty. That's according to the latest Poverty Trends report released by Statistics South Africa. The report highlights that more than a third of the population subsists below the country's lower bound poverty line. Now, this new figure shows a modest decline in poverty since 2015, but Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke warned that progress remains slow and many households continue to struggle to afford basic necessities. He joins us now for more on these numbers and what they're telling us. SG, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it this morning. Perhaps just I can allow you to give us a roundup of all of this. And I wanted to ask you if there was a way we could perhaps just make it a little bit more understandable and palatable to our audience too, because the understanding for everyone, I think, is going to be very important. Because you have the lower bound as well as the upper bound that you speak of. But why don't you just give us a roundup of this data, please? Good morning.
Good morning, Arabile. Let us start by explaining that we have three poverty lines. We have what we call the food poverty line, where anybody who falls below that line would potentially be poor. That is anyone who earns 777 rands per month in a household. So it doesn't matter whether they work or not. So in a household of about 4 people, for example, if they don't have an income, maybe using the word earn, I should use income, because income could come from a salary, it could come from a grant, old age pension. So if that household of 4 people doesn't have an income of about 3,200 rands a month, they would be what we call food poor, because your threshold is 777 rand, almost 800 rand. Then we have what we call the lower bound. In the lower bound, if someone doesn't have an income of 1,300, which would mean that in a household of 4 people, if they don't have an income of 5,200, they would be considered to be poor. That is according to the lower bound. And indeed, the lower bound derives its origins and its directives from the National Development Plan. And the lower bound means that they have to choose to buy food or some necessities in the house, whatever they want to procure. Then there is the upper bound. The upper bound is sitting, as of 2023, was sitting at 2,635. So when you look at that, it would mean that if in a household of 4 people, they don't have in the excess of about 10,000, almost like 12,000 rands, they would be poor in an upper bound. But our focus is mainly in the lower bound and the food poverty.
Yeah. Because
in the food poverty line, then these are people who could be vulnerable to hunger.
Yes.
So we have about 10.8 million people who are below the food poverty line, which would mean that we are sitting at about 17.6% of our population. Now, when we look at the lower bound that we are tracking in the National Development Plan, we have 23.2 million people who fall below the lower bound poverty line. These are people that, according to our National Development Plan, are poor in our country as of 2023. Why are we using 2023? It's because we conducted the income and expenditure survey in November 2022, ending in 2023. And we are using the 2023 population estimates as those that give us those who are poor.
So, SG, does that mean then that in accordance with the goals that are set out by the National Development Plan, which need to be achieved by 2030 at the very least to begin with, South Africa is not on track, despite a decrease in the number of people that are sitting in those poverty lines, according to your data?
Well, it's not our space, as statistics say, to say whether we will make it or not. But our job is to give the data. So let me say that in 2015, when we last released the poverty line, we had said 40% of the population was poor according to the lower bound poverty line. When we recalibrated, and why do we need to recalibrate? It is because we look at the food items that people are consuming as of now. There are 46 food items that come from the food basket. And when we recalibrated backwards, way back to 2006, in what statistically we call rebasing, we find that in 2006, about 57% of our population would have been poor. 2011, we would have had about 55%. And indeed, in 2013, we would have had slightly below 55%. But as of 2015, we had about 47%, 46.7% to be exact, that would have been poor. Now that number, the percentage is sitting at 37.9. So we see poverty continuously declining from 2006. No doubt about that. But the National Development Plan says that by 2030, we want to have 0% of people who are poor according to the lower bound poverty line. So when you look at where we are now, it's 2025. End of 2025, the numbers just came out, and but we are referring back to 2023, which would have meant that in 2023, 7 years before 2030, we are sitting at 37.9%. It means that there's a lot of work that our nation has to do to pull people down to 0%. Having said so, we see that there are provinces that have declined sharply. For example, in 2015, Limpopo was sitting at 66% of people that were poor, lower bound. It has now dropped to 47%, which means it has dropped by about 20 percentage points. This is the sharpest drop we have had of all provinces. We have other provinces that have dropped, but the rural provinces still haven't fallen below the national average of 37.9%. Provinces that are urban, like Gauteng and the Western Cape, are below the national average. But we see poverty in Gauteng having risen by about 0.2 of a percentage point. And it's because everyone is going to Gauteng from other rural provinces, as well as 50% of people who come from outside South Africa choose Gauteng as their destination. And indeed, the Northwest, which was on par with national average, is starting to show a growth of poverty higher than the national average. So rural provinces indeed account for a larger chunk of the people that are poor.
Statistician-General, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us and helping us to unpack that data just a little bit more. Risenga Maluleke, the Statistician-General, helping us unpack some of the poverty data that came out yesterday.